Major news on July 4th, a fitting day for a First Amendment victory to come out. Astonishing that it has to be a victory at all. I'm going to just lay this out to you really simply. We all know that the Biden administration was trying to censor conservative voices, pressuring social media companies to do that. We found out through the Twitter files. We found out through a lawsuit by the Attorney General of Louisiana and the Attorney General of Missouri, rather, going off and talking about this. So it was a very, very compelling set of facts about this. And now a federal judge has ruled that those facts are irrefutable and must be part of must be stopped. And the Biden administration has to stop what they have been doing. So let's just get down to it. Where the thing I was going to start with, of course, is turned into a bunch of ads now. So great. Okay, let's see if we can't get this going. Boom, boom. This is Tucker Carlson.
If reduction means pumping our most vaccine-hesitant audience with Tucker Carlson saying it doesn't work, then I'm not sure it's reduction. In other words, censor more. The Facebook employee responded by promising that the company was, quote, running this down now. We asked Rob Flaherty to join us tonight to explain, but of course he's a coward and he won't. So we only know this, by the way, because of a lawsuit from the attorneys general of Louisiana and Missouri. Jeff Landry is the AG in Louisiana, and we are honored to have him join us tonight. Mr. Landry, thank you so much for coming on. So you're the chief law enforcement officer of your state. You're the attorney general. This would be illegal, would it not be?
Well, it's certainly a violation of your First Amendment right, Tucker. Yeah. And I wouldn't say that the White House pressured Facebook. I would say that the White House demanded that they do something about the video that you had posted. Look, this suit is about whether or not the government has basically suppressed American speech as those Americans go about debating the very policies that the government has us under.
Right.
And if the White House did not like your position, or if your position did not agree with the White House, then you were silenced. And the evidence in this case right now is showing us that that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, let's just look at exactly what did happen, because it's somewhat astonishing when you think about it, what the federal government did, what our government did. I'm going to have some more reaction from Jeff Landry, both immediately before the decision came out with Maria Bartiromo, and then following it as a react. But I want to just take a look at part of the filings from the judge. On April 14th, 2021, Flaherty, who was the head of social media engagement at the White House, this is in the Biden White House, literally just 3 months after Joe Biden became president, okay? 3 months in, they are demanding, Flaherty demanded, this is the judge, Flaherty demanded the censorship of Fox News hosts, Tucker Carlson and Tomi Lahren, because the top post about vaccines that day was Tucker Carlson saying vaccines don't work, and Tomi Lahren stating that she won't take a vaccine. Flaherty stated, "This is exactly why I want to know what reduction actually looks like. If reduction means pumping out more our most vaccine hesitant audience with Tucker Carlson saying it doesn't work, then I'm not sure it's reduction." Well, as Tucker Carlson pointed out when this email came out, due to the Landry lawsuit, along with the attorney generals of Missouri and Louisiana, the attorney general of Missouri filed this. Eric Schmidt is now a U.S. senator, so he's very much aware of the problem in the U.S. Senate, and hopefully will be taking the next steps in Congress to fix this. But this is an exact example of the abuse of power within the Biden administration. I'm going to make that bigger so you can see it better. And let me just go down to the next one. On April 14th, 2021, Slavitt emailed Facebook executive Nick Clegg with a message expressing displeasure with Facebook's failure to censor Tucker Carlson. The subject line was, "Tucker Carlson anti-vax message." Clegg responded the same day with a detailed report about Tucker Carlson post, stating that the post did not qualify for removal under Facebook standards. After Brian Rice of Facebook forwarded the same report on the Tucker Carlson post to Flaherty on April 14, 2021, Flaherty responded to Rice, wanting a more detailed explanation of why Facebook had not removed the Tucker Carlson video and questioning how the video had been demoted since there are 40,000 shares. 2 days later, on April 16, 2021, Flaherty demanded immediate answers from Facebook regarding the Tucker Carlson video. Facebook promised to get something to him. Now, this is the White House. This is the White House telling Facebook, we expect these posts to come down. This is censorship at its most grotesque. These guys hadn't even found out where the bathrooms were in the White House, and they're already got a hotline going to the social media companies demanding that they take down material that they don't like. Well, we often said that this is First Amendment is pretty clear that that's not a role of the federal government, that their individual right to freedom of expression, freedom of speech is inviolable. And yet these guys didn't care at all. I'm going to read you this last one. Promising the White House that Facebook would censor often true but sensationalized content, imposing, these are all different citations, imposing forward limits on non-violative speech on WhatsApp, assuring White House that Facebook will use a spectrum of lever censor content that DOFOs, I don't know what that means, not violate our misinformation and harm policy, agreeing to censor Tucker Carlson's content at the White House behest, even though it did not violate platform policies, deplatforming Alex Berenson at White House pressure, Facebook deplatformed the disinformation Doran immediately after these comments. Okay, so here's the key. It's proven, and the judge cites definitive cases where Facebook took down Tucker Carlson and other conservative speech. We have the obvious Hunter Biden laptop, which, by the way, Jeff Landry also cites. I'm going to get to Jeff Landry here. I want him to have say-so on this because he's really a hero in this. He's the Attorney General of Louisiana. ALG used to work with him when he was in Congress. I've met him a few times. We've done a few things, praising things he's done down in Louisiana. The fact of the matter is, the heroes in fighting the fight for freedom right now, we all look to Capitol Hill, and there's some guys there doing good things. But the bottom line is, the attorney generals, state attorney generals in this country, have been stepping up big time and have been fighting the overreach of federal government on a variety of fronts and winning. And this is just another example. So Jeff Landry is really a hero in this. So I'm going to just show you a little bit of what he had to say. This is with Epoch Times, and this was yesterday, on July 4th, after the judge's temporary injunction against any further White House meddling in speech came out.
And look, we found email chains between high-ranking White House officials and social media platforms, specifically targeting certain individuals such as Robert Kennedy Jr., Tucker Carlson, Tommy Lauren, and others, directly targeting them and asking those social media platforms to take their content down. That is extremely concerning. We also saw from the FBI evidence which showed that they knew the Hunter Biden laptop to be factual and yet didn't tell the social media platforms that as well. So there are a number of things that, as we uncovered information in the discovery process of this case, that was shocking to us. All of that was presented to this judge.
Okay, remember, I think we have to add in that in terms of the Hunter Biden laptop, it was the FBI that was directly telling social media companies. We know this because of testimony by Twitter, what we learned from Twitter, well, particularly from Twitter, that social media companies were being pressured on the laptop and saying, this is misinformation, and it needs to be kept out of the public display, can't be out in the public. You have to block it. And as a result, and this was a campaign that the FBI engaged in when they knew the laptop was legitimate. They knew the laptop was legitimate, yet they were telling social media companies that it wasn't and it had to be banned. This was a direct intervention by the FBI into the political process and protecting one candidate over another. And oh, by the way, it was a coercion, because we saw their whole, in the Twitter files that Elon Musk released, we saw a complete fight going back and forth between the Twitter team saying, no, this is, really pushing back about whether it should be censored or not, until finally they gave in. They gave in to the Department of Justice, who was pushing for it to be censored. By the way, the supposed Trump Department of Justice that were insisting that it be censored. So, greatest cover-up in history may just be the Hunter Biden laptop. But let's hear what Jeff Landry goes on to talk a little bit about the implications of this in terms of what we might be able to expect the government to do.
So there's a lot of evidence that this whole kind of censorship enterprise started up in relation to elections. So the question is, how does this injunction, or what does it say about, I guess the 2024 election we'd be talking about next here?
I think that what will happen is more Americans will be more guarded, and we will be watching the actions of the federal government in relation to the 2024 election. This case has some elements of election misinformation, disinformation, according to the federal government that was put out. It should concern American citizens. We want free, transparent elections such that Americans have the ability to debate their position on candidates and the positions that candidates are taking. We want them to be able to have that conversation in the virtual public square without interference from the government. But we know now, look, it's proved that the government knew that the Hunter Biden laptop was real, and that information on it was absolutely corrosive to President Biden's election. And yet they hid that from the American people. We know from experts that said, hey, listen, all political experts all agree that had the Hunter Biden laptop story not been censored, the president most likely would have lost the election. I mean, think about that. That is our own government keeping information that is vital to Americans making a decision as to who the president of the United States is away from them, long enough for us not to be able to make informed decisions. That's the things that this case contains. And that's how serious this case is, and Americans should be following this case. Because again, if the government can go out there and suppress information on presidential candidates, then Americans are really not free to decide who they really want to vote for.
Wow. And, I think what General Landry is talking about there is pretty compelling. This is a threat to our whole democratic process. We've just spent 4th of July. We've shot off some fireworks and had some fun, and some people barbecued, and hopefully some people read the Declaration of Independence. But one of the key elements of the Declaration of Independence is this concept that we are not just endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, but also that our government is to secure those rights, not violate them, secure those rights, and is completely at the will of by the consent of the governed. The entire legitimacy of the U.S. government, of our experiment, a great 243-year experiment, is about the actual who's in charge. Are the bureaucrats in charge? Are the people in Washington, D.C. in charge? Or are the people in charge? And it's that fight between intention, between who's in charge, that's the fundamental aspect of our government, and it always is. And what Jeff Landry and what the case that he brought has shown is that in 2020, the government decided that they were in charge, that they couldn't trust that the people didn't get to choose their representative, that they were going to put their thumb on the scale far more than any Russian, Chinese, other kind of actor might have done, that our own government put the thumb on the scale to pick winners and losers and to choose Joe Biden to be president. Now, you and I can know why that was. They had been trying to, the same actors, characters, villains, had been attempting to get rid of Donald Trump before he even became president, with talk about invoking the 26th Amendment against President Trump, but with his cabinet before he even became president. That was an active discussion before he became president. They set up the Mueller investigation after James Comey went in and got himself fired for lying to the president, but also for going and being a guy who's going to take one for the team, because they needed to get to a special counsel because there was nothing there. They had nothing to get the president on in terms of Russian collusion after all their attempts. This is a Department of Justice that kept applying for search or FISA warrant after FISA warrant after FISA warrant, when they knew that the baseline for the FISA warrant was false and was politically motivated, and there was nothing there. And yet they continued to dig and dig, hoping for trying to get this President Trump, on charges of obstruction of justice. These guys were determined for the entirety of the Trump administration to take down Trump. And they got the job done when they said, we're protecting Joe Biden at all costs. We're burying the Hunter Biden laptop. We're burying the corruption that we now has occurred in terms of the sale of the office of the vice president anyway. And they buried it all because they had to get Trump. And they needed to get Trump because he was upsetting the apple cart of what they were trying to do around the world, and actually trying to bring America back to the status that it belongs, which is top of the heap. And that's the sad truth. That's the sad truth. And it's so that's what we have. And that's why this case matters. And that's why guys like Jeff Landry from Louisiana are heroes, because he could just duck. But no, he's been fighting it out. He's been fighting in court to get this information out. Tucker Carlson knew that he'd been censored because Jeff Landry and the Missouri AG at the time, Eric Schmidt, fought and got that information out of the federal government. And it's why we need to pay attention to what's happening at our state level, because the person you elect as Attorney General may be able to do more to preserve your freedom than the person you elect as president. And that's the truth. And it's because our states have tremendous power to be able to sue the federal government when we as individuals cannot. Now, what Jeff Landry is suggesting is that this will provide a means that this proof, and this case is still a long way from over, but that this set of proofs of violation of First Amendment freedoms will pave a way for people who are specifically had their First Amendment rights violated to be able to have a cause of action against the federal government. And let me give you a simple example of what that looks like. If somebody let's say they had 1 million followers on YouTube, and they were making $50,000 a month in revenues from YouTube, and the Biden administration was pressuring the YouTube to stop them and to take them down because they were using misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation. And YouTube took them down. It's hypothetical, but it's a viable one. took them down based upon federal government pushing for them to be taken down or to be blocked. Those people have an action against the federal government for lost revenues. They have an action against the federal government that is clear, where there's a direct cost, and can go ahead and pursue that action to be made whole financially, if nothing else. The second question is, what happens to the political officials that actually engaged in this? Well, those that are political career employees can be put to pasture for all intents and purposes by the Congress engaging in something in an action which allows them to freeze their salaries, make it so they don't get paid anymore. This is allowed under the House rules. It's something that every single one of these careers who have engaged in this censorship can be subjected to. But there's another thing that can be done, and most people aren't talking about this. It's really frustrating. Congress can actually, suck it up and change a couple of laws. I'm going to talk specifically about CISA, which was a piece of legislation that passed in 2018. Donald Trump signed it. And it was sold as being a benign way for the federal intelligence agencies to be able to communicate with utilities and others about emergencies and break down allow them to share secrets with targets that might be under attack, and you couldn't tell them about it unless the secrets could be violated. Okay, it could be breached. So that's what it's ostensibly about. But what they actually did within that is they said, oh yeah, and oh, by the way, we're going to allow the Department of Homeland Security to play quarterback point guard for the intelligence agencies, so they can go and communicate with social media companies and tell them to block malinformation, misinformation, disinformation. And the Department of Homeland Security, up until about 6 months ago, bragged about this openly on their website. You have to go to the Wayback Machine to find out more, but and quite honestly, we've done a lot on this, and all you have to do is go Daily Torch and search CISA on Daily Torch, and you should be able to find numerous articles on it. In fact, we'll have another one out tomorrow if all goes well. But for right now, Congress needs to take away from CISA the right to communicate with social media companies about misinformation, malinformation, disinformation. Just cut it off. Cut off the head of the snake. If you go to our chat, you'll see at the top of the chat, there should be a way to do that. So if you, and here it is. So just click there, or if you go at the top of this live stream, just click on it, and it will take you to a petition to tell Congress to do just this. We've been working on this issue for years. This is core. This is fundamental. We cannot allow for these people to get away with this. And ultimately, I really, I love the chatter and all the outrage from various people. Many of the people I really like in Congress. But when it comes down to it, the simple action that they need to do, and it's just one of a few, but one action they need to do is rescind, eliminate, pass legislation that ends the Department of Homeland Security's ability to engage in this activity at all. They have no business talking to social media companies about misinformation, malinformation, disinformation. The head of the snake needs to be cut off. They've abused their powers, and they can no longer be trusted with this. And that's what we're telling Congress, and we're hoping you'll join us. And we're hoping you'll share this video with others so they can see what's going on, so they can be part of the solution. Because quite honestly, we have a massive victory. We've had a number of massive victories. There's reason to be hopeful. But I just want to remind everybody that after July 4th, the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence did so in a very somber atmosphere. It wasn't cheers and a lot of bravado. Each one walked up and put their signature on the document. And they put their signature on the document declaring, which was a treasonous document, rebelling from the King of England and the most powerful army on the face of the earth. They did so with full expectation that they wouldn't survive the experience, that they would be destroyed. And when they pledged their lives and fortunes to freedom, they did so with full knowledge of what that meant. It could mean ruin, personal financial ruin. Many of these people had real business relationships with Great Britain that went away, and they ended up impoverished. It could mean that they personally lost their lives at the end of a rope as a traitor. They signed the declaration anyway. And then on July 5, they didn't just run around and go home and hide in a cubbyhole. No, they made copies of the declaration. They made sure it spread throughout the colonies. They made sure it was on that publishers across the nation were reprinting it and putting up as handbills up on the trees, so the average person could read it and find out what's going on. Their local officials were talking about it. There was a buzz. This buzz was created, and the buzz was created around the basic idea of freedom and liberty. Did the war go well immediately? No. Valley Forge was in 1776. Just 6 months later, the U.S. Army was on the verge of collapse and under extreme freezing conditions at Valley Forge, where they had inadequate housing, they had no food. It was an army that was starving to death with no boots for their feet. George Washington took money out of his own pocket to try to help fund the army, as the federal government at the time was dysfunctional and couldn't figure out couldn't get any money into the soldiers' coffers. There was real concern that the army was effectively going to disband because people had to re-up at the end of the year. And a lot of people weren't going to do that. They were going to go back home to where it was warm as opposed to freezing in Valley Forge. And George Washington had this idea. He said, we've got to do something. Got to do something to build morale. And so what they did is on Christmas Eve, they went across the river, and from Pennsylvania to Trenton, New Jersey. They went across and they attacked the German mercenaries, the Hessians of Trenton, and routed them in a surprise attack in order to build morale, to show the soldiers that they could win battles. It was a battle worth fighting, that it wasn't just futile. And we've got that picture of Washington crossing the Delaware, and it looks all clean and everything. This was not a clean thing. This was a bunch of hard scrabble, freezing men desperately fighting for freedom and winning a battle that really shifted the course, because the morale boost caused people to sign up. We ended up, the rest of the story is we ended up with more discipline because we ended up with Prussian officers coming over and teaching more discipline into the army. And we had generals coming, Lafayette and others come and help become leaders that hadn't been developed in America, but military leaders who could help this army win. Took years of fighting, but we won. 56 men signed a document. They didn't just sign it and go home. It's July 5, 2023. We celebrated the 4th of July, Independence Day, yesterday. But we have to fight for it every day. And that's what we're doing here at Americans for Limited Government. I would encourage you to sign this thing. I'm going to take a look at some of the chat now and see what we got. And I'm going to do one of the first ones here because I think it's funny. Well, it's not funny. It's just about damn time. Lee, it's frustrating how slow things move. But yeah, the fact of the matter is we do have the system moves more slowly than most of us would like. And we get very frustrated with it. But the fact is, we now have a couple of things that have occurred that are important. We've got this focus on the censorship and saying you can't do it. Federal judge saying you can't do it. Big fight. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. It may take 3 years to get to the Supreme Court. You know, but it's a fight that is being led by state attorney generals from states where those attorney generals are going to be conservative. It shows that we can fight back and win. 2, we have to get Congress to get in the game and start ripping some of this language out by the roots that allows these bozos to do this stuff. Even though it's unconstitutional, it's still Congress. First Amendment, Congress shall make no laws. Well, Congress made a law, in the CISA law, that specifically allows them to do this. And Congress needs to stop it. Now, that law will eventually be overturned in 3 to 4 years, but the damage done by these potentates in the bureaucracy in the meantime is incalculable. Repeal any vestige of authorization, and they need to do it now. So that's what we're hoping you'll do by going and clicking on to the note or the take action. And I will tell you, this take action has not been updated since the court ruling. It'll be updated tonight or tomorrow. But this is exactly what they need to do. We'll add in the court ruling stuff later. But when you sign that, your email's going directly to Congress, and it is and it's important. Okay, why are we hearing the same over and over again? Well, here's why, Tony, and this is really simple. And I appreciate the question, because you'd think that we knew all this stuff. Well, we did know all this stuff, but you know what? No court had said this is illegal before. You're hearing it because most people had never heard it. And the reason we do videos like this is so you can share them, so it can get out well beyond. One of the things that you guys have to appreciate, and we truly appreciate this, you guys, when you're sharing, and I know you do work on this. When you guys are sharing these videos, what happens is they sometimes go out and get exponential reach. Last month alone, the reach of the videos that we put out exceeded 4 million people. 4 million people. So when you set the fire by sharing and by pushing it out, you are actually creating the environment where people who didn't know about this get a chance to see it and understand it. And hopefully those people then can share it with their friends. And then guess what? The Facebook and YouTube algorithms go, whoa, and Rumble algorithms go, wow, this is something that people are interested in. And so suddenly you're hitting a whole another group of people that we don't even know how to get to. They're not even in your inbox. That's how this works. And you guys are critical to that success. So why are we doing this? We're trying to give you a package that you can send out that you can help, that you can do something about, because quite honestly, us knowing this is interesting. A federal court saying that this has to stop is relevant. And in the politics of today, the courts are under attack from protesters and everybody else. And we have to let Congress know that we expect them to do their part and take action, as opposed to just sitting on the sidelines and saying, oh, we'll let the courts handle it, which is what they typically do. Let's see here. Once again, I'm going to show this. Stacy, everyone's always known all this. Well, what's going to be done about it is exactly what I described. And Stacy, I appreciate your comment. It's, those of us who follow this closely are not shocked by this, but the fact of the matter is, a guy like Jeff Landry, he can spend his time at AG of Louisiana, can spend his time on a lot of different things. He's chosen to spend his time to try to fix this problem, knowing that the courts are slow and it's frustrating. And that's a big deal. And the guys who put their political lives and fortunes on public display and can get blown up at any time and put themselves under the onus of a Department of Justice that fights dirty. You know, they have to be held up too. They have to be, when they win, when they do something that helps win, that helps preserve freedom. Yeah, we have a responsibility to let you know about it, and hopefully that we can hold them up and kind of create pressure on Congress to do the right thing. Let's see here. I'm glad that a Trump judge rejected Joe Biden administration. The special counsel Jack should be investigating money laundering. I don't trust this corporation. Past me, Dennis. I think that I think the one thing we can expect is that there will be a battle royale over everything that Jack Smith's trying to do. You know, it's one of those things that you can almost depend upon, that every time that Joe Biden has an ounce of cocaine found in the White House, Donald Trump will get indicted for something. So, you know, Jack Smith's a tool. He's been a tool his whole life. He's a guy who engaged in a completely fallacious prosecution against the former governor of Virginia, Bob McDonnell, that got blown up in the Supreme Court because he essentially made up crimes to convict him of. And that's what the similar thing he's trying to do with Donald Trump. It's the same exact game plan and pattern. And a guy who the Supreme Court said you can't make up crimes and then try to convict him, then gets promoted in the Department of Justice system and ends up getting all sorts of great positions because as his reward for going after the political enemies of the left and abusing his power. And now he's got the plum of all times, his wholesale approval by the Department of Justice to try to take down Donald Trump. So there's going to be a fight, but it's not a fight we can back down from. And the fact of the matter is, it's why we have to take down the legal capacity for these people to use their power to destroy speech in America and destroy dissent. It's why this is so important, is these guys are corrupt and you cannot trust them. You know, you can't, people say, there's an old saying, absolute power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's true. And the fact is, the right to dissent, whether on the right or the left or the middle, anywhere you fit on the spectrum, the right to dissent is fundamental to American freedom. And if we can't have a fight, an argument over the direction of the country, then does the consent of the governed matter at all? And the fact is, the answer is no. So that's one of the things we're trying to do. Let's see. American in exile. Hey, how are you doing? And I have to say, I understand being in exile. Wicked what about the EU ruling that the internet companies must remove misinformation? Musk said he will comply. Auditors will be watching fines and removal of this penalty. Well, you know, one of the things that they have the capacity to do is on a country by country basis. They can make certain information available and not available. That's been true about China for a long, long time. The United States laws affect the United States. They don't affect the EU, and the EU is there is no right to keep arms either, but no right, freedom of the press, freedom of speech in any EU constitution. The EU is essentially, while it was founded under Western political thought, they never had the American experience of having a consolidating revolution that created a constitution and a guarantee of rights. Those countries are all founded on the old monarchy system, and where it was really about individual power and projecting that individual power under the guise of nationhood. And America is the only place in modern history that was founded upon an ideal, the ideal of freedom. That's why July 4th is a refreshing time for me, because I can focus on the foundation of the country and how we're and who we're supposed to be and what we aspire to be, and then get down to work the next day to try to advance the ball in some small way in that regard. So the EU can do what they want to do. I don't live there. As Americans for limited government, we're going to fight for freedom of America. And when the EU ends up into trouble because of the various riots they're having right now in France and will spread elsewhere, because they've effectively eliminated their native populations, and then they're going to have their own problems, and those problems are going to be a lot worse than anything that's happening in Ukraine. But we'll figure out what we'll have to deal with as a nation later on. But they have to decide if they're going to be free or not. And the EU as a body is essentially nothing more than a bureaucratic entity that has, truthfully, little legitimacy from a freedom perspective. Florida Girl, good to see you. I haven't seen you for a while, and late to the party. Well, it's still going. I kept it going just for you. Why is it slow to get good stuff done? It only takes seconds to get bad stuff done. Wrong people doing stuff. That's a great question, and the answer is simple. Those who think you can govern by the stroke of a pen have the advantage of being able to just fiat stuff into existence that's illegal. And then you have to go and say, no, wait a second, you can't do that. And the more conservative jurists, let's put it that way, are less inclined to engage in broad powers than the very liberal ones. Example, when Donald Trump was attempting to close the borders to people in 7 countries where we had no way of knowing who those people were who were coming, or any ability to figure out if they were terrorists or not, a lawsuit was filed by the University of Washington, of all places, based on the fact that they might have students that come from those countries. And it was filed in Hawaii, of all places, in the Ninth Circuit, but in Hawaii, where they had a judge who said, I'm going to put a nationwide injunction affecting our immigration policy. And it took 2 years to fight through the system to get the Supreme Court to say, no, Donald Trump has the right to do this. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Of course the president has the right to do this. And so the left has been very willing to abuse that power and to expand that power in the court system. And yet on the same kind of course, a federal judge in Texas ruled that Obamacare was unconstitutional. But he didn't hold an injunction against the putting implementation of Obamacare across the board. And that didn't happen. And as a result, even though there was a ruling that was unconstitutional, they kept implementing Obamacare. And by the time we got anywhere, by the time we got to in front of Roberts, a significant portion of Obamacare had been implemented. And we all know that Roberts basically construed it into a legitimate offering based on turning it into a tax as opposed to a fee, which nobody argued on either side of the bench, on either side fighting that case out. But we know what Roberts did and how he got stuck with Obamacare. So, the courts. One of the things that operates more slowly for us, we follow the rules. If you follow the rules, things happen slowly because the rules are designed to make things happen slowly. When you don't care about the rules, you can go ahead and you can break everything, and then you can say, oh, well, I broke everything, so now you can just try to pick it all up. Our system is designed to be where it's supposed to be by rule followers and not rule breakers. Unfortunately, the left has decided they're going to be rule breakers. And I am of the mind that should we get power again, we have to be much more aggressive in terms of implementing, not just undoing what Biden did, but undoing the government excess that's occurred for the last 50, 60 years. And Supreme Court decisions like West Virginia versus EPA allow us to do this. This is one of the reasons I'm really optimistic, okay, because we now have the Supreme Court imprimatur to say, if it goes beyond the statutory limitations of what Congress set, it has no right to exist as a regulation. That means you don't have to go through the Administrative Procedures Act. You don't have to go through any of those things. You can literally challenge regulation after regulation after regulation, say that doesn't exist. It goes beyond congressional intent. If you can get control of the House, the Senate, and the White House under budgetary authority, you can do budget reconciliation, and you can have 100 regulations that go well beyond the legislative intent, and defund every single one of them and take them out of existence. Wipe them from the face of the earth, and fundamentally restore individual liberty in this country. We can do that. 2024, we got to win both the presidency and Congress, both branches. So we can do a budget reconciliation that implements West Virginia EPA on a broad scale and eliminate the disastrous administrative state. We have to be the same way. We have to then go and change the way the whole civil service system, and not through broad changes that could never pass. We have to do it in a way that fundamentally makes the people who are in the civil service accountable when they lie, cheat, and steal, when they engage in unpatriotic activity, as the FBI has done. We have to be able to hold those people responsible. We have to be able to fire them, and we have to be able to take away their pensions. We have to make it so the lowest learners of the world, the woman who was in charge of the IRS investigations into a lot of the conservative C4s, who caused immeasurable harm to a lot of good people and impoverished a lot of people. All they want to do is participate in politics lawfully, that she doesn't get to go home with her pension anymore. She loses her pension. We shouldn't reward somebody and say, oh, retire and have $125,000 in your pension every single year. No, we shouldn't do that. We have to take the pension away. We have to make it so if they can be hurt personally, financially, and they can be held accountable for the financial harm they've done. So there's a little more concern about what people's rights are in this country, and a little less willingness to impose your political will on people and try to destroy them based on their political beliefs. And that should be true on both sides of the aisle. Okay. So I guess hope that helps. Let's see here. A big thunderstorm going on. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but outside my office, it's got thunder boomers going everywhere. Let's see. Yeah, the internet. Once again, the EU doesn't have. There are ways to make it so there are filters for what goes into the EU and what goes into the United States. Okay, it's just that's just the way the internet works. China's been censoring stuff that comes on the internet for years. The EU will be able to do the same, and that is and if they want a closed, ignorant society, that's their business. But quite honestly, the people in the EU need to step up and say, we reject this. We will not allow you to do this to us. And throw out their elected leaders, who then go to the EU as delegates, and throw them out and force them to go and hold the EU bureaucrats accountable, because the EU is one of the most more undemocratic institutions that you get, because nobody's actually elected to be the EU rep. They are elected by the individual parliaments, individual state or government legislatures, and so it is more of a bureaucratic state than it is an elective body. Let's put it that way. I'm not an expert on the EU. I just know they keep on doing things like saying, gee, you can't have we don't want to have food, so we're going to kill the farmers by not making it so you can have fertilizer that works, and make it so you have 30 to 40% less food production. What could go wrong? Well, in France, they have a 17% food reduction in France, and they're having riots right now in France, largely from the immigrant population there, largely Muslim, and they have riots going on. The farmers are mad because they can't produce the food, and the people who are poorest are mad because they're not getting fed. Guess what happens? You destabilize society, and that's what the left is attempting to do. They're attempting to destabilize all societies in the Western world because they know a destabilized society that they can turn it into a dictatorship, and that's what they're doing. It's intentional, and we have to stop it from happening here. I am going to just close up by saying this. Over the past 2 weeks, people often are in despair, and I've shared that. It's been a difficult 2 years, 2.5 years, watching this administration destroy everything I love about the country, and willfully do so, and then sit there and point at people like me and people like you and say, "Oh, well, you guys are the ones who are wrong. You're the ones who are dangerous. You're the ones who are somehow evil." And it's been hard to watch. It's been hard to deal with. It's been hard to fight, truthfully. Fighting every way we can, and taking encouragement from the small wins that you get. But I will tell you, the decision in the affirmative action case, just stating outright that racism is not going to be tolerated in this country, is a massive win. Stating that, because you know what? When I look at Barack Obama saying, "Oh, this is terrible," how are blacks going to get ahead? I'm going to say, well, how the heck did you get ahead, buddy? How did you get elected president of a country that's so racist that you have to have special admissions standards to get people into various universities? Well, you got ahead because people were willing to vote for you. You think people will vote? I mean, that's how you got ahead. So shut up. How did Kamala Harris get ahead? Talk about an affirmative action candidate. And I say that because the president Biden said, "I'm going to pick somebody who's an African American woman." Well, by nature, it was a decision based on race and sex that disqualified a vast majority of the population from even being considered. And that was a choice he made, and America chose, ostensibly. So she ends up being vice president, and she ends up being, well, shall we say, not competent. Real slap in the face to African American women across the country that there wasn't even apparently a competition on this. So, let's just be real. It's that's a huge win to say equal consideration. If you can compete, you need to compete to be able to be to go to a place like Harvard. What concept? You look at the decision with a woman who was the web designer, not being told that she had to design web pages for gay marriages. I mean, how dare somebody say, "Gee whiz, I'm going to compel you to use your intellectual and other and technical capacities to be able to promote a position that you disagree with." And obviously, it was on religious grounds. But you know what? It's sort of like coming to me at Americans for Limited Government and saying, "Well, you've got a lot of people watching your videos, so you need to do a video on something that you completely and totally disagree with." Well, no, I'm not doing that. But have the audacity, for the state of Colorado in that case, have the audacity to think they could force that is insane. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court said, no, we're not doing that. Individuals have a right to conscience. I don't expect an atheist to do a website for my church. Don't want them to do a website for my church. By definition, they don't get it. And I could do a very good website, but I certainly don't want them compelled to. They don't want to. So it's pretty much, so that's a basic freedom of expression issue that I think the courts have doubled down on. I already talked about West Virginia versus EPA, but earlier this session, we had a case where the federal government was trying to. It took 9 years for this case to get to the Supreme Court. The federal government went after this family, trying to regulate a puddle on their yard, in their farm, and effectively destroyed. Really did everything they could to destroy this family, mounting massive fines and everything. And finally, 9 years later, this family gets to the Supreme Court and they win. Now, the damage done by the left on it is immeasurable to this family. And I hope that there's a way for them to get compensated based on the abuse of power by the federal government. But bottom line is, property was reasserted as being a right. It's kind of important. I wish we could snap our fingers and say, let's just make it happen. But it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. You know, we have things like the Biden administration going off and trying to make it so we all have to convert to electric cars. And knowing full well that by the time the court system gets around to saying you can't do that, most people the manufacturers will have converted all their factories over to only making electric cars. That's what they're betting on. So we have to do better. And the place to do better is in Congress. And that's why, once again, I'm encouraging you all to go. And if you have not, go and send the email to Congress urging them to get rid of the allowances for the Department of Homeland Security to be engaged in communicating to social media companies about what they consider to be disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. Congress has to start acting. Ultimately, we have to get Congress to start acting. And you are the engine to do that. And I'm going to leave it at that. I appreciate all of you guys hanging in there. And please share this. If you're on here, share. It really matters. We see these things just take off. We get the analytics and it just blows me away. And I'm just so proud to be able to do this and play a small part in fighting for freedom. And your sharing it is immensely valuable. I can't overstate how valuable it is. So thank you very much and have a great day. We will have more video content up as well. Check out the video content we do. We've got a number of good videos that are supposed to come out today. In fact, I'm going to do another one after we get done here that'll be on a different subject, but I think it'll be pretty powerful. So let's just keep sharing, and small armies can grow exponentially, and we have the tools to do it with the internet. So just keep it up. You're doing great work, and I'm going to say something I don't get to say very often. Folks, we're winning. It may not always feel that way, but we're actually winning. And we're not just winning little battles. We're winning fundamental rights, battles about fundamental rights, about the DNA of this country. We are winning the important battles right now. So don't get frustrated. Don't give up. Just keep punching. With that, this is Rick Manning. Take care, and thank you very much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.